Reflections on a Triumvirate of Hearts in Light of Human Nature. It is with great regret and no less astonishment that I, your humble observer, am compelled to note that human nature, even in its youngest and least blemished form, is prone to the most nonsensical and, at times, most tragic absurdities. Allow me to relate a most curious incident that occurred in our small town. Indeed, this tale might be deemed a mere fabrication, had I not observed it with my own eyes, sitting in my chair and contemplating this most amusing, though mournful, spectacle. Chapter 1. On the Origins of a Peculiar Triangle. There was a young man, Edward, whose capacity for philosophical reflection was as immeasurable as his disposition to melancholy, a handsome fellow, William, whose beauty, one might say, was the sole reason for his existence, and lastly, the young Miss Amelia, whose charm, contrary to the opinions of modern coquettes, was but a modest ornament to her incomprehensibly sharp mind. These three, from childhood, were inseparable, like the three heads of some monstrous beast. Their friendship, it seemed, was as solid as granite, and as cold to outsiders who could not comprehend their internal and most peculiar relations. Edward, being by nature a bookish man, spent his days in our library, musing upon the transience of being and the grandeur of the ancients. William, whose soul yearned only for amusement, entertained us with his carefree jests and his masterful command of the sword, which, it must be noted, brought him no advantage save for the admiring glances of the local ladies. Amelia, fortunately, was possessed of sense, and, as I suspected, was the only one of them who had any sound judgment. She expertly combined seriousness and lightness, listening to Edward's philosophical tirades with pleasure, and then, with even greater pleasure, ridiculing his gloomy predictions. Chapter 2. A Passion That Shattered a Friendship. But, alas, even the strongest of friendships is but a temporary edifice, liable to be shattered against the rock of infatuation. This unfortunate event occurred when the hearts of the two young men were struck, almost simultaneously, by the incomprehensible charm of Miss Amelia. I, observing this from the side, could only liken the event to an epidemic that had afflicted our quiet corner. Edward, being shy and exceedingly confused by nature, began to express his feelings in verses. These works were so allegorical and veiled that they might have baffled even the most experienced theologian. He wrote of Amelia, using metaphors that compared her sometimes to the celestial sphere, sometimes to a perfect geometric figure, hoping that her sharp mind would decipher these codes of love, hidden beneath a layer of philosophical reflections on the vanity of existence. However, as I've already stated, female hearts seldom respond to such intellectual exercises. William, whose courtship was always as direct as a soldier's march, began to shower Amelia with compliments that were as trite as a Sunday morning sermon. He presented her with flowers, plucking the finest blossoms from other people's gardens, which, I later learned, led to several unpleasant incidents with their owners, who, I might add, were prone to exaggeration and excessive greed. On one occasion, at a ball, William, in his eagerness to capture her attention, staged a whole performance. He stole the latest hair-styling tool from the local barber and presented it to Amelia, declaring that this instrument would best emphasize the beauty of her hair. To my great surprise, Amelia, instead of being moved, merely smiled and said that she had no intention of turning her hair into a work of art, which, by the way, is a sign of poor taste. Chapter 3. Alienation and Suspicion. In the course of time, this war for Amelia's heart began to ruin their friendship. Edward, in his melancholy, started to avoid William, considering him too superficial and incapable of deep feelings. He often complained to me that William used his charm to conceal his emptiness. William, in turn, mocked the gloomy philosophies of his former friend. He called Edward a library ghost who could find the answer to any question, save for how to live. Amelia, finding herself at the center of this strange triangle, conducted herself with admirable prudence. She accepted Edward's verses with a polite smile, though I suspect she understood little of them. She responded to William's jests with a light laugh, giving him no extra encouragement. Like a true strategist, she kept them both at a distance, observing their war as if it were a game of chess. One day, at a picnic, Edward and William, who until that moment had been avoiding each other, came to a head. The cause was, as always, something minor and foolish. William, in a moment of carelessness, spilled juice on Edward, who, instead of simply wiping himself off, began to lecture him on responsibility. This escalated into a genuine quarrel, in which they, like two roosters, tried to prove their superiority. Chapter 4. The Unexpected Choice. This event was the final straw. Amelia, observing their folly, suddenly realized that neither one nor the other was the man she sought. Edward, in his excessive seriousness, could not see the beauty in simple things, while William, in his excessive frivolity, could not be a reliable partner. After much deliberation, or perhaps simply tiring of their indecision, she chose as her life's companion a young doctor, a man of modest yet sensible character, who neither wrote her convoluted poems nor told her hackneyed jokes. He simply loved her. He brought her flowers from her own garden, and they read books together, occasionally arguing with her, but always with respect. When I asked Amelia about her choice, she replied with a smile, "Mr. Edward wanted me to solve his heart like a riddle, and Mr. William wanted me to simply admire his heart like a painting. But Mr. Thomas simply offered me his heart, and that was all I needed." Such, dear readers, is the story of friendship, competition, and affairs of the heart, which once again confirms my opinion that human motives are often as inscrutable as the flights of flying islands.